Welcome everybody to the Justice Project Oversight and Planning Committee meeting on today's date is October 16th, 2025. It's 2:01 p.m. and I am calling the meeting to order.
Before we begin, we acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional and unceded territory of the Lummi, Nooksack, Samish, and Semiahmoo people who have cared for and tended this land since time immemorial. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. We pay respect to their elders, past and present. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together here today. And please join us in uncovering such truths at any and all public events.
Great, thank you. Okay, so welcome everybody. My name is Holly O'Neill and I serve as one of the meeting facilitators. And since there's some new faces in the room, I just wanted to welcome you and also to thank our co-chairs, so Tasha Thompson, who opened the meeting, and Hannah Sloan, who just did the land acknowledgement. So they are we work together to prepare these agendas and make sure that these meetings are really just amazing. I think these meetings are amazing. So here are a couple logistics. If you're joining by Zoom, please keep your video on as much as possible. Keep yourself muted except when speaking. Remember that they're open public meetings and they will be recorded, and the recording does go up on the county's website at the end of these meetings or a couple days later, along with the minutes, which Marty prepares. When we're in the open discussion mode, please raise your hand to speak. You can either just raise your hand and usually I see that on the screen, or you can use the raise hand button. And when you're using acronyms, because there's a lot of acronyms in this world, we try to always say what they mean, and I will remind you, or anybody can say, hey, what is that acronym? And we'll pause and make sure we all can understand what's being said. So those are the logistics for today. All right, so the agenda. We're going to talk about we've been in this process of really gathering more input from the community at large in some of these critical discussions we're having. So what we're going to do today is we're going to hear from the highlights from the All Hands Whatcom Summit that recently happened and key gaps that they identified in the reentry systems. Then we're going to have a panel discussion on ideas for closing the gaps at reentry from frontline workers. So thank you for everybody who's come here as guests today for those conversations. Then we'll wrap it up with our 2025 year-end reporting and closing with the public comment and get out of here by 4 o'clock. So any questions about today's agenda? Okay, hearing none, here we go. Key gaps in reentry systems, highlights from the All Hands Whatcom Summit. And Heather, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for making this possible. And do you want to go ahead and share your screen?
You know, we are actually just going to talk, I think, for a minute. First of all, thank you so much, JPOP, for inviting us here today. I'm here with some of my teammates. I see Elizabeth Boyle, who has been our project lead for All Hands Whatcom, Sue Ling Zhao, who is the Community Advancement Director for the Chucknut Health Foundation. And then sitting with me, I have a special guest, Daryl Riley, who's the Executive Director and founder of Up From Slavery Initiative. And he's been our key partner and lead in hosting re-entry simulations for different communities across Washington State. And we may have another special guest named Joey, who's joining us a little bit later too. And I think, can you raise your hand if you were able to attend the All Hands Whatcom Summit this year? I see Pamela, Jason, Melora, Eric, Marty. That's awesome. So feel free to chime in too at any time. And thank you, Marty and Holly, for the invitation to just come and share highlights from the days. in preparing for getting to come here today, I was reviewing Chuckanut's history of work around the Justice Project and my own history. We'd love to share a timeline of some of the advocacy we've done in the past. And Marty and Holly, if you could send that out later, we will send you a PDF of that. And we also have a PDF of some of the gaps and highlights that you can have in writing too. But in the prep for today, I also was reviewing the JPOP purpose and scope and reviewing the implementation plan and what the county committed to around reentry, and thinking about how that moment, that window post-release is such a critical window, and how, from my understanding, it is so severely under-resourced in our community. And so there's a lot of opportunity to do better, as you all know. And the reentry simulation, I'll let Daryl share more about how that day, the flow of that day and the purpose of that day and the outcomes. And then the all hands day was really all about that intersection of substance use, behavioral health, reentry, and incarceration. And when the things end up in the jail, that really the jail isn't equipped to support and treat. And if our goal as a community is really long-term public health and public safety, what are the policy decisions, budget decisions, and funding decisions we need to make today that can shape that investment in a really actually much more advantageous way than what's currently happening? And that, obviously, you all know, is JPOP's purpose, is how do we ensure that the justice implementation plan projects are actually being implemented to fidelity of what they were envisioned as, and with the right voices in the room to influence that. And so thank you for the ability to come here today and just share a little more. And with that, I'm going to hand it to, I think, Sue and Daryl to share a little bit about the reentry simulation.
I'm happy to take a pause. Daryl, this is your creation, and I would love for you to share whatever is on your heart about the simulation.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to share in the JPOP. That sounds kind of cool, JPOP. You guys got a little swag with your handle there. I like that. What I will say, first of all, is I don't know many of you, but I am proud of these efforts. I've been around the county doing reentry work, and Whatcom has taken the lead in terms of the impact on community. And just proud to know you all. Thankful for the Chuckanut Health Foundation for bringing us out here a year ago. I have a relationship with Mr. Ritchie, and just excited to all of you who could attend the simulation. I will say at the beginning, when the young lady said you guys always have exciting meetings, I think that was the language that she used. In your efforts, I think it could be more exciting if you brought in more justice involved people. A lot of you all are professionals in your line of work, and I'm willing to bet, whether it be budgetary or hiring or whatever it is, you don't make decisions without consulting the experts. And this is one of those same situations. You guys got to get this right because you put a lot of effort and energy into it. And I like to ask myself every time I enter a meeting, who's missing? And there's a lot of people in this community that are connected to you all that are really already out here doing this work. And I think you owe it to yourselves to give them an opportunity to come in and identify gaps that you might not necessarily see. The reentry simulation, we've coined it an exercise in empathy, but that can only go so far. You guys got to consult the subject matter experts, and I'm grateful to be here. I'd be willing to do my part. I consider myself a future partner with Chuckanut Health Foundation and this county as a whole. So anything that I could offer, any advice, any ideas I could offer, I'm more than willing to do that. And I do have a lot of ideas. But first and foremost, you guys got to get more justice involved people. We met with a group this morning, and so many things were identified that are needed that probably just aren't on your radar. And that doesn't make you ignorant. You know, I mean, we don't know what we don't know. So thank you for welcoming me, and appreciate you all.
So for an overview of the event itself, so Daryl has been our partner in collaboration and creating opportunities here in Whatcom County. It's been a gift to get to see the simulation a few times, and just so we can talk through the mechanics for folks who haven't been there. It is designed to be the first 4 weeks after incarceration. So people are given an identity and they move through the simulation over four weeks and have to navigate services and navigate the requirements that are given to them, whether it's going to probation or showing up for employment or how their living situation starts. And over the course of the simulation, people are trying to learn how to move through this world that is incredibly disorienting. And it is a beautiful learning opportunity. And as someone who loves immersive learning opportunities, getting to see this in Bremerton and then getting to support Daryl and Christina from Kits Up Strong bringing it here last August, and then supporting them in Olympia and supporting them just a couple of weeks ago here in Whatcom County has been absolutely amazing. But what's really interesting is how we digest and learn from the experience. It is one thing for someone to move through the conversation, through the simulation itself. It's another thing to be observing the situation as one of the neighbors in that community, watching people struggle through these various systems and navigating these systems. Some of whom are very familiar with these systems, some of whom are not so familiar with these systems, and what challenges end up emerging for people. Daryl, you ask every single time, every single week after the simulation, how many people ate this week? And it is interesting to find out how many people cannot make time to get food as they navigate these systems. And that being an indicator of some of the challenges of learning and navigating a new web of systems and structures and barriers. This year for the All Hands Summit, we had the simulation, but then we followed it up with an entire day of community conversations talking about what's really happening here in Whatcom County. Robin, I see you. One of the greatest gifts of this process was working with Robin and her team on developing composite stories so we can learn how to map the challenges of our own systems. And I'm really excited that today's agenda is going to support the conversation of looking at our gaps that we're having locally from people who support our community members in Whatcom County. And I think with that, I'm wondering if I should pass the mic over to Elizabeth to walk us through our reentry system findings.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having us here. And it's really great to look out and see Caleb and Eric and all these different people that were such pivotal pieces of year one and then continue into year two. So thank you, everyone, for this incredible work. Sue, can you share your screen? Would that work to show the?
I sure can.
Thank you.
I'm always here to be a hype person for you, Elizabeth.
Great, thanks. So we're sharing a document and we'll send this out later. And it's a one-pager. Is that showing up for anybody yet? It's not showing up for me yet.
Yeah, it's still a dark screen.
There we go. There we go. Perfect. And so we'll send this out for everyone to read, but the first page is really like an overview of what we've done so far with the reentries and just, why we got started into the work. But if you can scroll down to the second page, I'd love to review some of our findings from the different simulations. And again, I don't think this is a surprise to any of you. You all are so versed in this work, but we want to share that these are the 9 things that came out of the different simulations we've been a part of. This is informed by our community members and namely informed by those with lived experience. So again, there's no surprise, but I'd love to walk through these and just have them on the top of our minds. First is access to essential services. You know, we talk about the IDs, behavioral health, so the access to essential services is number one. Number two is housing. We know housing is a big issue. Number three is employment and education and skills. When people leave, how are they going to be set up for their next step? Number four, and these are not in order of importance, they were just as they are. Number four is mental health and substance use care. You know, Daryl referred to our conversation this morning with about 10 folks with lived experience in the jail system, and specifically mental health was called out as such a critical piece for every single person. Number five is peer support and navigation. Again, that was called out heavily this morning. Number six, coordination across systems, and you all as system providers know how important that is. Number seven is policy reform and practical supports, things like the technical violations and transportation access. And let's see, public education, stigma reduction. I know that is critical as we ask people to really believe in the system or believe in what they can do to support the system and to invest in care for our community members. How can we influence our community to understand how important it is that we take care of each other? And finally, the prevention. So we get back way upstream and like, how can we also be thinking about areas of prevention so folks aren't even in this spot to begin with. And if you can scroll down just a little bit more, Sue, I think it's interesting to look at Reentry 2030 that the state of Washington has adopted these three key goals, and they directly align with the top three we have on our list as well. The three goals from Washington State, and you probably are all aware of these, but I just want to clarify them to make sure we have them top of mind. As one of the goals by 2030 is to have focus on employment, so increase 6-month post-release employment to 40%. 2, achieve zero returns to homelessness. That would be amazing. And number 3, healthcare. Ensure 100% of eligible individuals are enrolled in Medicaid 90 days before their release. And so I think one of the questions we have moving forward is Whatcom County working on these three specifically? What's our role in the state? What's our role as a leader in the state as well? And how can we advance this for all community members? So Sue, I think you can shut that, close that screen if you don't mind. Thank you. And then we'll send that out. But we're curious, we'd love to have a conversation about hearing what other people's stories are. Like Daryl, I suspect you can add on to some of those 9 that we mentioned. You know better than any of us with all your all the work you've been doing around this, that you can add to that.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. First of all, in all counties, everybody is struggling with the unhoused, mental wellness, and drug abuse. I have to tell you, I haven't done the statistics, but I can probably say with good authority that 95% of those people all struggle from the same thing: bad reentry practices. All of them have been to jail before. And in my mind, reentry doesn't start when you get out. Reentry starts once you get arrested. And unless you guys want to end up with the same jail you got now, just bigger, then you're probably gonna have to make some changes. And I'm just interested in any of the participants who were there, if they have any questions for us.
Oh, Joey came. Hi, Joey. Welcome. He came at the perfect time.
Oh, yeah, literally, Joey, right on time. Perfect. I'd love to introduce Joey a little bit. He's one of our favorite people in this work. He started with us with last year's reentry and has continued to be an incredible champion of this work, showing up to events like this, but also bringing in other people with lived experience and really inviting them into this work in such a good way. And Joey and Daryl are continuing to work together so we can continue to amplify Joey's voice. Joey, we just talked through a little bit about the reentry simulations and some of our learnings. I'm curious if there are specific things that, from either this morning's conversations or the past reentry that you would like to amplify.
I was thinking, just before I came on here, I was thinking one of the things we hadn't talked about, which has been one of the biggest hurdles for me, has been in the past, finding housing or finding work just because of my criminal history. So I don't know if we'd have to work on legislation for a clean slate type law or something to help get your criminal record wiped easier. But that's been one big thing, but
It's huge.
yeah, I was reading through everything. There's been so many big points touched on. I think a lot of the little stuff, like when you go into jail, there's like an atmosphere, you know. The inmates feel like they're supposed to act like inmates, and the COs, I think, feel like they have to act like they have to be the COs. And if someone could start a lighter atmosphere somehow, I think that would be contagious. Yeah, and I think just programs and stuff that was talked about at the simulation, little stuff like textures on the walls and colors and just stuff to help with mental health would probably have a huge impact on day-to-day just mental health of inmates. Maybe some pods like we were talking about earlier for if people who are really serious about wanting to change could go to treatment, you know, everybody in the same mental space. Yeah, stuff like that.
Thank you,
Thank
Joey.
you, Joey.
Yeah.
One thing I want to bring into this conversation is looking at the justice implementation plan. Project 11 specifically is about bolstering reentry support services. And I don't know if you've had a chance to look back at that and what the county approved as their plan. But I want to read a few things. They say individuals leaving the description of the project, individuals leaving detention, and especially those who are unhoused upon leaving an involuntary detention, need many resources to ensure a soft landing in the community and to prevent a return to behaviors that increase risk of re-incarceration. Ensuring support services are available to help people begin making reentry plans as soon as they are detained, with seamless continuity to reentry services throughout the community, has been identified as a critical need. The two lead organizations are Sheriff's Office and Corrections and the Whatcom County Health and Community Services. Essential collaborators for this plan are our reentry specialists, community-based provider organizations, the Housing Advisory Committee of Whatcom County, and the County Executive's Office for a capital project specifically. And the key next steps that the plan later says are very ready to implement and achievable within the first year of passage are adding 3 behavioral health and reentry specialists to coordinate reentry services and link people with a community of support, clarifying the location, services, staff, and peer support systems within various communities where people can link seamlessly with reentry support services such as case management, peer support, and assistance with housing, employment, healthcare, etc., and work with partners to develop the concept and budget for 1 or more reentry and resource centers, possibly co-located with supportive housing. And the cost estimate and sources of fundings included a total of $6 million for a one-time capital expense, plus a $300,000 a year for reentry specialists and $500,000 a year for resource center operations, with funds coming from the proposed new sales tax, state funds, and behavioral health funds. And as JPOP, as your role is to advise and hold accountable to the implementation of this plan, one of my requests of you is, could you check in on how the county's doing on Project 11? Have they achieved the things that they said they wanted to do in year 1? And what's the opportunity now to do more of that? Because it's clear that for many, many people, like Daryl said, the re-entry window is where we're failing often, and it's what ends up people coming back and cycling back through. And I mean, I have a hope and a goal that our jail's actually empty someday. I don't want it to be full, right? And so working backwards from those 3 re-entry goals, especially having Daryl and Joey here today, I know you guys had an incredible panel in August with some people who shared some very heartfelt stories that when I watched, I really think that should be required watching for everybody in Whatcom County. And I'm curious if there's any other questions for our team or for Daryl and Joey, especially. I think about like what in those first 48 to 72 hours, when people leave Whatcom County Jail, what actually happens and what do we need to have in place to ensure that there's, you know, a handoff to something better, you know?
Well, I've never met anyone that's getting ready to be released from jail, rubbing their hands together and say, yeah, I'm about to go out here and get in trouble. But I do know that if a plan's not created for them, or if they're not helped to create a plan for themselves, they're going to create one on their own. And oftentimes those plans are based upon the rules of the streets, which is primarily going to get them back in trouble. I don't think people know. A lot of you all weren't at the simulation, but to give you a connection to it, a closer connection than you already have, I can guarantee you that everybody on this call, at one time or another, you've done something that you could have got in trouble for had the circumstances been different. Right? So just consider that one time you may have a little too much wine to drink, and bring yourself closer to that issue. That way we could all settle it together. We could figure it out together. But we gotta figure out a strategy ahead of time. If we don't, we're just releasing people back into the same circumstances with no end in sight.
I never felt like maybe if I had something figured out, I could have done something. And I mean, not saying that would have even helped. You know, I mean, you can bring a horse to water, but it just depends. But even if I would have had a plan, that would have been something. But every time I was released, all I knew was to go back to what I was doing, you know, because I didn't have anywhere else to go and I didn't know any better. I didn't know what to do or what was out there.
Joey, what do you think in that moment, what would you have needed to have been ready for that next step?
Well, maybe somebody meeting you at the gate saying, hey, let's figure something out. What do you know, have a plan. And that plan needs to start, you know, when you get to jail, I think.
Yeah, leaving jail or incarceration, it's like it's like coming from a foreign country.
Yeah.
I've kind of coined the frame social adaptation. It takes a lot of that because the world changes so fast. Things you could say publicly a year ago, you can't say now, you know, and folks need help with that. It's unfair to release somebody from jail and think they're supposed to figure it out without a strategy or a plan. It just doesn't work like that.
One of the interesting takeaways from this morning's conversation is folks were talking about, to Daryl's point about the social adaptation, was even going to the grocery store was really stressful. It's like, oh my gosh, all these people, all this noise. And it was like, oh, that's so interesting. Like things that most of us haven't experienced, like that transition is so intense for them. And how can we support that process?
I see Peter's hand is raised. Peter.
Hey, Joey, I've got a question for you. I'm Peter Fraser. I'm a co-chair with Heather of the Incarceration Prevention Reduction Task Force. You said that it would be helpful if somebody was there to meet you at the gate. Could you talk about, just reflect on the various times you may have left a jail? What would have been the most helpful type of person with what resources? I mean, are we talking family? Are we talking friends? Are we talking peer counselors? Are we talking caseworkers? I'd just love to hear any detail you've got for us.
Let's see, thinking back to the last time, not this last time, but the time before, I had been clean. I was probably in jail probably 3 weeks and then got released, and I was still I was coming off heroin, so I was still just feeling pretty crappy. And so maybe if somebody could have met me there, with some family and took me to detox, or just started me in some, because I was clear enough that I would have been totally open to some suggestions because it had been 3 weeks, but I went right back to using. But yeah, some treatment. Maybe find a place. I had an apartment that time, but maybe another time if I was homeless, you know, look at setting up a place at the Mission or going to look for a clean and sober house. Yeah, those type of things, I think. And it's going to be different for every situation, every person, every time they get out, depending on what that specific person needs. But for me, the substance use was the number one thing.
Mhm. Heather, are you good with calling on people? And
Yeah,
we have
I'd love to. I see
one more
Tasha and then Tay.
Along those same lines, you mentioned 3 weeks incarceration. I guess, is there like a time frame if you've been in for a certain amount of time? You know, I'm on the law enforcement side, of course, so I arrest people. You know, sometimes I arrest people. You know, you mentioned DUIs. Well, they already have a job, they have a house, those type of things. Is there like, do you see a better reentry if they've been in for 6 weeks until they make bail or hearing or whatever they are released, or do they need less services if they've only been in for a couple of weeks? Is there a difference?
Are you asking me?
I
Whoever
think
wants to
Tasha's,
take off.
yeah, asking Joey and Daryl your perspective on that.
I'll tap in.
Yeah.
So is it Tasha?
hmm
I think what you're describing is kind of behavioral health, right? It's a different behavioral health than the broadly defined medical term of behavioral health. I don't think it's a time frame that makes a difference. I just think somebody needs to be there to guide them. Again, it's like coming from a foreign country. You know, you're nervous about it. Most oftentimes, it's not your first rodeo. So you've told all the lies and used up all the excuses. And you just kind of need somebody to walk you through that scenario to the next step. So I wouldn't say it's a length of time. Even the person that's committed DUI, they're not only struggling with the criminal court case, but they're struggling with the embarrassment. It's embarrassing to go to jail. And it's a struggle because we know we've let so many people down and we probably let them down more than one time. So I don't necessarily think there's a time on it. I just think there should be something or some system advocating for folks that are getting out with the ability to steer them toward resources with the warm handoff.
hmm Joey, would you add anything to that?
I mean, it totally depends on the scenario and the person, I think, and it depends on what's going on with the person's life. For me, I think the longer I was in there, the more open to accepting resources, for sure. Yeah.
Thank you. I see Sheriff Tank.
Yeah, first I want to thank Daryl and Joey for being here. So, you know, we focused in the last 20 minutes just about that warm handoff. But my question to Joey and Daryl is about the care and the communication even before you're let out of jail. So that's one of the things that I additionally want to focus on is that while you're in jail, some of the questions, are we asking the right questions? Are we providing the right things? Because if we're not, even when you get out of jail, then I think we've missed some things. So I would like to know your experiences with that and if you have any suggestions.
Yeah, pleased to meet you, sir. It would be my suggestion that you have a reentry pod, right? That you have a space for those that might be interested in going in treatment. And I'm not sure what the rubrics will look like for them to qualify, or the custody level or the security level might look like. But they need to be separated because we do know that everybody don't want to do right. So we're not gonna sit here and say that everybody wants to get out and do the right thing. We know there are people that are still on that BS, but you got to figure out how to weed them out and get them separated and started having conversations about case management. What's your situation? What do you need most? Because Joy and I don't necessarily need the same thing, even though we might have the same circumstances. So we got to identify those. And I think having a pod or a section for reentry would be helpful.
Joey, anything you'd add?
I think that's a great idea because we could have the most perfect plan, and you have to be ready and wanting it. So yeah, so people have to be separate. Get everybody that's in the same mind frame and the same pod. People who are willing to accept the resources and help. I think that's the number one thing. I think.
And thank you. That's a great idea. Thank you.
Also, sir, one other thing. Well, 2 points about people that are in jail and that we're talking about. One of them is that oftentimes it's not their first rodeo, right? And the second thing is money is their trigger, right? Money is one of their main triggers. So we also, like in our county, we have a program called Banking Beyond Bars, where we bring folks in who have a job and have been recently released. And we start talking to them about rebuilding their credit and repairing the harm that they've done financially. I think that becomes huge because once they know how to handle money, it doesn't become a trigger. Like Joey said, you can have a perfect plan, but you get a few $100s in your pocket and your mind just takes off. So if we can start implementing that as well, I think that's extremely helpful to make them feel accepted by community, to feel like they are part of it and contributed to it.
Thanks, Daryl. Amber, I see your hand up.
Hi, thank you everyone that's shown up. Daryl, welcome. Joey, thank you for sharing your experience. It's very valuable insight. I love when we bring people who are working with this population day in and day out. It's something I'm very passionate about. One of the things, Heather, and you mentioned, and I think it was, we don't have the handout, but you mentioned like Project 11, and it was, you probably have discussed it before, but you were talking about kind of like seeing how the county has held accountable to maintaining that. And one of the things that was just kind of coming up is, I'm working with this population daily, and I realized that we are coming up with a plan for the future. And I don't know if this is something you can speak on, but like one of the biggest barriers, and it has come up, is housing, right? I can send somebody to inpatient, I can get them into a clean and sober house, but I can't get funding. And the only one funding that I currently know about is the HARPS funding, right? And that's a huge one. If somebody's gone to treatment, they can utilize HARPS. And I got off the phone with them yesterday, and they cannot give funding all the way out until March. As of right now. So even if I get somebody out of treatment, so I'm just kind of curious, because that was like, my mind was blown. Is this like a plan for addressing this, or any thoughts on that, I guess?
Yeah, that's such a great question, Amber, and I feel like it's the question of the day for so many people. I'm sharing Project 11. I didn't make it up. I didn't write it. It was, it's published. It's in the Justice Implementation Plan. And this is what really was shared with voters to say, this is what your justice sales tax is going to pay for. And so I think that I wanted to bring that back. And there's actually quite a few amazing projects in here, right? And they're all related because it is all connected. Project 10, ensuring people leaving detention and treatment facilities have transportation to a safe destination. And the county went through the work of finding out, estimating how much money will this cost every year and what funds are we going to get for it. And then JPOP was established along with the Finance Advisory Board to continue oversight and make sure that we're doing this work. So I think it's really important to dust it off and check in and say, you know, this is a really awesome plan. Let's not put it on a shelf. Let's actually make progress. And I think you're exactly right, Amber. There's like a what do we do today and what are we building for tomorrow? And I think there are a lot of things we could do today. And I do think that JPOP should be advocating for fidelity to these plans and making sure that they're reflecting and actually making sense for people going through the system and that they're getting good outcomes. And I think it's also quite reasonable for JPOP to say, hey, Finance Advisory Board, can you please come up with a money plan? We've identified that these 3 things are the most important things in this reentry window. Can you find a way to pay for that right now, right? Like, could we have a dream of from moment of incarceration, moment of entry into the jail, that there's a peer navigator connected to that person right away, that it isn't like your last day in jail, you're just meeting this person, but the first day in jail, and then work on that plan and find what is the next path after this. And like that, I've understood is really can be quite the game changer to have a peer navigator working with you. And then the other things that I continue to hear about are just the connection to employment and housing and the like really human-centered decision making within the system with the judges, the prosecutors, the public defenders about what are the collateral consequences for this person's life and what are we setting them up for in the future. So if you give somebody a record, a criminal record, their chances of employment and housing go way down. And what do you think the opportunities are after that? And so the second chance employment, supporting that. And yes, Amber, the reentry housing, like specialized housing, I think is a critical need, and making sure that the people who have the purse strings decisions know that, and that that's at the top of the list for the reentry opportunities. Stop sharing and stop pontificating, but those are some thoughts. Anything other people want to add on that?
I'm really glad you brought that back. I feel happy every time we go back to the implementation plan. I see Stark, your hand is up, and also I just want if we could maybe wrap up in 5 so we can transition to the panel. Heather, does that work for you?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's great.
Stark, go ahead.
Mhm.
Yeah, many of us on this call went and looked at the jail in Franklin County, Ohio, which had a facility attached to it called a Rapid Resource Center, which is not an insubstantial facility. It's several thousand, theirs at least was several thousand square feet, I would estimate. It was staffed 24/7. And just to provide you with a description of it, it was sort of likened to if you went to a museum, you always have to exit through the gift store. And that facility had, really basic things like a place to wait for a ride out of the rain, a place to charge a cell phone, a place to maybe get a cup of coffee. But it also was staffed by people who were prepared to give referrals to various services and frankly, I can't remember what all else they provided, but I guess all of our reaction to that Rapid Resource Center was very positive. In fact, I can remember one of the corrections officers remarking that this is a game changer and would very much like to incorporate that into our new justice project. I guess I'd like to hear from the 2 of you what you think of some kind of a facility like that where you literally exit through it as you're on the way out the door, and what kind of services might be provided on an immediate basis like that would make the transition to outside of custody an easier one.
I think it all depends on how much other stuff I've been doing in jail. And like, if I'm thinking back to that day that I got out, I don't know if I would have, because it was just on my mind to go use. I didn't have any other options. So if I had walked through some place like that, maybe. But if I'd been in there those few weeks and building a plan and had somebody meeting me and going through there, then I could stop and definitely take advantage of it. So I think that alone, it could be helpful for the right person for sure, but I think, you know, much more also needs to be incorporated.
Yeah, I actually think that's a great idea. But I also agree with Joey. A strategy has to be developed. Because like he said, he was thinking about using and what could we do to change his mind? What could spark change in his mind prior to that? And that's why I'm a big proponent of kind of separating a reentry part where you have a chance to work on those things and then maybe going through that gift shop will kind of lighten the load or lighten the tension off of you before you step back in here. Because you got to face your family after going through that again. And it's all these things that are swirling in your head. So any semblance of normalcy, of life that could kind of change your mind before you get out there would definitely help. But if that's all it is, that's only fleeting. It's only momentary without a strategy and a plan.
Sark, what do you think in response to that?
I agree with all that. And that's, you know, I think we were all very impressed by that facility. You know, but they're exactly right. It is fleeting. I mean, it's not going to necessarily help you re-enter to be able to charge your phone. It might be a convenience, but that's not the bigger picture here. And I get that. My understanding is one of the reasons they built that facility in Ohio is because they had a situation where someone was released downtown, you know, one night and was hit by a car, and they you know wanted something as basic as a safe place for somebody to wait for a ride, and you know, on the other hand, you know, just to get practical here, my reaction to that facility in Ohio was it was a very expensive portion of the Justice Project, not only in terms of the construction, but also in terms of the staffing it 24/7. And so I think as we go forward, we've got to prioritize our funds here. And if that's only going to have a fleeting benefit to people being released from the jail, then you know, maybe we need to rethink the amount of our resources get devoted to that. That's my reaction.
Thank you, Stark. I want to honor the time and to know that you have a panel next with some more discussion about how to actualize some of these ideas, I think. And I just want to thank Holly and Marty for the invitation. I want to underline that I hope that you'll invite us back because we'd love to continue informing conversations and being part of the dialogue. And JPOP has such an important role with the metrics and accountability and influence over what's going to happen next with this funding stream and with this implementation project that's even bigger than the dollars coming in. And I know how amazing each of you are on this committee, and I know how open your hearts are, and I'm just grateful for your ears and hearts being open to really understanding what is the experience and how do we do better. So I'll let Daryl and Joey take the final words if there's anything you want to close us with, and any last words as to leave with JPOP as they're moving forward on their advocacy with county. And
Well, I would also suggest that along with the idea about a reentry pod, that you would get some businesses involved, right? Some businesses that will be interested in hiring because all businesses are struggling with labor. I got 3 businesses, and I can tell you, finding people that'll show up is probably paramount. That matters more so than their criminal history. So finding business partners that can possibly sponsor or contribute or do a trial run with folks who've shown themselves to be successful and have a real plan in their reentry part, it could be like an easier handoff.
thank you. Joey, any final words from you?
I just want to say thank you guys for, you know, hearing my side of the story and my opinion. So thank you guys.
Thank you to the Chuckanet team for all your preparation and support for all this. And thank you, Joey, for zooming in, and Daryl for being here too. I'll hand it back to you, Holly and Marty.
You're muted, Holly.
Here we are. Thank you. That was great. And Heather, thank you so much for your leadership in all this with Chuckanet Health Foundation, and what a gift to our community, bringing all this leadership and inspiration forward. So we're going to seamlessly transition into a panel discussion with other guests today from people who are directly connected to the services that are happening right at reentry. And so Hannah Sloan, one of our co-chairs, is going to facilitate the panel. So Hannah, are you ready?
Yeah, thank you, Holly. Just a reminder to everybody that is on the JPOP committee, this is an opportunity for the panel to fully share their thoughts and perspectives, and to hold any questions that you might have until the end if we have time, and then we'll have time at the next meeting to hopefully reflect on what was discussed today. So let's give them our attention and listen to the perspectives that they are sharing. And those of you who are joining us from Chuckanet Health Foundation, please feel free to participate in the panel and share your thoughts if you have anything as well. So go ahead and start with some introductions with our additional panel members. If you could share a little bit about your professional or personal experience related to reentry from the jail to the community. And we'll start with Robin.
Thanks, Hannah. Well, I supervise the mental health court program in Whatcom County, and I'm actually at a therapeutic court conference with a number of my counterparts and counterparts throughout the state. And a lot of what the work that I've done with the jail is meeting with people in the jail and putting together those supports and those plans, and to what's going to help them be successful once they leave and entering my program. And honestly, it's anybody who's referred to our program, whether or not they end up entering. And we work pretty closely with jail reentry. And as I was listening to the discussion before, I kept thinking about those moments when, it's very important for us to meet somebody as they're leaving the jail. There's so much that's going on. There's so many things that can go right and so many things that can go wrong. And, do they have, even like right now going into the fall, we have people that were arrested in the summertime and they don't even have the right shoes or a jacket or a coat into the winter. But my experience, the most powerful experience, is that walking outside of the jail. And right now we've got the jail and the courthouse and this corridor. And it's usually not until we hit the sunshine and the sidewalk that somebody takes a really deep breath. And there's that deep breath, and then it's like, okay, well, what's next? And sometimes we have a place for somebody to go. We don't always. And that's, I think, the most important thing is, what's next? Is there a safe, supportive place for somebody to go? Like, do they know where they're going to get a meal, have clothes, be able to lay their head that night, and then start going on what are the next steps? When I told my counterparts here at this conference about this call, the first thing that everybody said is like, well, we need housing, we need shelter, we need a physical place for people to go. And I do think that that's the biggest challenge, is that first step. And then also supporting somebody, because what somebody wants to do first varies pretty dramatically based off of their needs, how long they've been in, whether or not there's family, there's, other things that have been put on hold, whether or not we have access to insurance, if we are able to get that turned on or not. So I could probably go on for quite a while. That's a long introduction, Hannah. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Thank you, Robin. Melora, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody. Melora Christensen with Whatcom County Health and Community Services. I manage our response systems division. So I have the privilege of working with Grace and LEAD and Mental Health Court, our street medicine team, and our alternative response team, and a new overdose pilot that's been going on for the last 6 months. I just, our work is very much invested and committed to making linkages and figuring out where the gaps are and finding solutions that are going to work for Whatcom County and looking to evidence-based practices to do that and using and leveraging the resources that we have. And this conversation already has been so rich and full. So thank you to Chuck and Joey and Daryl and all of you.
Thanks, Melora. Kira?
Hi, my name is Kira Hazley. I am the Lifeline Connections PAC team supervisor, and I used to work as a reentry case manager in the jail, working with individuals with severe mental illness, returning back to the community. So it came with its own unique, interesting difficulties and challenges.
Yeah. Thank you. Alice?
Sorry, had to hit that audio button. Hi, my name's Alice Florida. I am the HEART team supervisor here at Lake Whatcom Center. I run a team that has non-emergent responses here in the community in Whatcom County. We also work very closely with Lifeline Connections at the jail with a program called ACE, which stands for Access Care Equitably. We will basically get a referral from the Lifeline Connections team, and my team will go in and visit with individuals while they are incarcerated and basically build a soft rapport and tell them who we are, that we're Lake Whatcom Center, what services we have available within the community. And if it seems like something that they're interested in, we start the the intake paperwork. And once they are released from jail, they're actually provided with my office number, and they can call me directly to set up a mental health assessment to get them connected to services. It's one of the only ways at Lake Whatcom Center to get connected to services through an appointment. Everything else is basically through open access. We also have Heart House, which is an emergent shelter bed. And there's 8 beds, and it fluctuates on census of who needs a bed is how we're going to divide it. They can stay anywhere from 90 days to 6 months, depending on the need. And they are only accessible through a person being released from jail, being released from a long-term hospital stay, or successfully graduating a treatment episode. We've had multiple individuals come into Heart House specifically just from the jail, and then they will do their mental health assessment with me and get connected to services through Lake Whatcom Center with a case manager. And then eventually housing is the long-term goal. Let's see, sorry, there's a lot of little different things. Also worth noting is that we have a library embedded heart specialist literally down the street from the jail. So when I heard mention that when somebody leaves the jail and takes that first breath, I'm out, thank goodness, where can I go? What can I do? Go to the library. They can go directly to the library. I have a heart specialist there during all library hours, every single day. They can get water. They can get, honestly, just granola bars on site, but we can also get them connected to a heart team member with transportation and get them to a food bank if they need to. If they just need a real meal, we'll take them out to Burger King. It really doesn't matter. If they need clothing, we will help connect them to those resources. Last week, we had a gentleman that had basically exhausted every opportunity to get a sleeping bag, and it wasn't available. So I went to Walmart and got him a sleeping bag. And it's little, but it's little to me, okay? But it's huge for them. And it's just trying to break through those barriers. And the person that's at the library, I have 2 different people, they work opposite shifts. They basically have a big awareness around all of the accessible resources, specifically in Whatcom County. So I may not be able to tell you all of them off the top of my head, but we have this, it's a document, it's a living document. We call it the misses. And it's literally pages and pages and pages long. And half of their job is going through and keeping it updated. As we all know, resources come and go. They get, depleted, and new ones come and take their place. And so part of their daily duties is updating that and making sure that the resources that we're sharing with people are accurate and valid and accessible. And I think that covers it in a nutshell. Sorry if I took too long. Thank you for inviting me to this. Thank you for making me aware of it. I didn't even know this existed until like 3 days ago. So yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you, Alice. Is there anybody else joining us on the panel that I'm not seeing? No. Okay, well then we will move on to our questions and kind of just do a round robin and how we did with introductions, and let you guys speak to each of these questions individually before we move on to the next one, if that works. Anything from you, Holly?
Yeah, maybe I just got a little communique from Melora that she has to leave a little early. So maybe we could have Melora start, if that's okay.
Yes, of course. Okay.
Great. Should we get those questions up, those next
Yes,
pieces?
that'd be great.
Marty, on the screen.
All right, so thank you all again for being here. And we just want to reflect on the gaps that we're seeing with reentry, especially reflecting on what we just heard from Chuck and Annette and their team based on the All Hands Whatcom event that just happened. So our first question is, what has been successful so far in Whatcom County in addressing some of the gaps that we've seen? Melora, can you start?
Yeah, I can. And yeah, I'm going to have to jump off at 3:30. So thanks for accommodating that. I would also say that I think my perspective in answering these questions is different than some of the other panel members, and that I'm kind of representing the policy level or some of the leadership decisions that get made at the county or community level. So I appreciate the opportunity to reflect on that. I think that as a community, as Daryl pointed out, I think we're doing a lot. We're having conversations like this. We're having rich dialogue and not shying away from some of the hard questions or hard conversations that we need to have in order to have a transformative system. The status quo cannot continue. We can't keep doing what we've been doing. And that requires courage as a community, and that requires innovation. And that also often makes people uncomfortable. And big questions of like, well, is that going to work? And so I think we've already set the stage for having those conversations. And some of the great things that are already going well are that those players come to the table on a regular basis. They meet to talk about how is reentry working with the current players, what needs to change. There are people on this call who can tell you how many conversations there have been around transportation at release, right? Hours and hours of time trying to figure out what we can legally do, what the resources are, and how we do it together. And right, because we miss pieces of it when we don't have all of the right people at the table. But I do want to agree with Daryl that I think as a community, we need to have more lived experience in these spaces. And we have to figure out how to do that in a real way. Like surveys tell us really good things and give us good data. But, Joey and Daryl's sharing today is so meaningful, and that's often what's lacking there. So like, how do we integrate those into our work groups? I think we've also shown that we can build new things as a community. We can build programs, we can dream. Alice was talking about the position at the library 2 years ago that didn't exist, right? We can create new things when we come together and pool our resources. We do not have to do it the way we've always done it. And I would say that the other thing we're doing well is that we're elevating the gaps in a real way. We're gathering data to show that these gaps are real. I think the community we're looking forward to updating our sequential intercept model as a community in 2026 and doing structural steps in that way to say, what is the need? What would it take and how much is it going to cost? And then do we prioritize that as a community? And the big question is, what are our priorities? And I think this group and many others speaking up and being willing to state that is what we need moving forward.
Thank you. Robin, would you like to share about what you've seen has been successful?
Yeah, and I think what sums it up with what's been successful is the creativity with what we have, and it's some of the things we've already talked about, but then that's led to, like, when we have to be creative, the dreaming about what we need. And so that's, when I was hearing Alice talk, it's like, that's the type of creativity that we have with what's working, from the HEART team to jail reentry, working with the behavioral health specialists, with the public defenders, Nathan Byma and Ashling meeting people there when they know that there's gaps. And that's not been part of necessarily their job description, but we know that there's a gap. We're finding somebody who can be there. The amount of times that I've coordinated with Kira in her many roles, that type of work, and the work that we've done either with triage or detox to get people in the right places with Sun House and the heart recovery beds. Sun House has been critical for at least us, of something that's been working, because it's a safe landing place that has some support. Creativity around transportation has been working. The LEAD program and the GRACE program, oftentimes it's those lead case managers that we're coordinating with. So there's multiple pieces with what we have, and the willingness of this community to come together and be creative has been a big part of what's working, with Lifeline Reentry, coordinating with Lake Whatcom Center, coordinating with, Compass Triage, and this whole spectrum. Those are the pieces that are working. And then again, like I said, it's that goes, well, if we only had, so then that leads to the dreaming. And I do think that that's working. So.
Thank you. Kira, do you have stuff to add?
Yeah, I just want to echo the creativity and the collaboration with all of the community partners. There's just, like, if you have one client that's your sole focus for the day, you can pretty much get a really successful release between the public defender's office, the jail, crisis triage, whoever it may be, to have like the most beautiful execution to somebody releasing out of custody. But that's only one person, one focus, while there's like 16 other releases who aren't getting that time and energy. But there has been tons of improvements even over the past couple of years, with the implementation of the ACE program has already helped bring clients connected with mental health resources, and like the Lighthouse Mission now holding beds for those exiting the jail. Like, those resources are continuing to grow, and still a lot of way to go, but at least it's starting to happen.
Thank you. Alice?
Right, so something that I believe Melora said was that just a few years ago, we didn't have the embedded library heart specialist. Just so everybody knows, heart as a whole has only been around since 2021. I myself have only been part of the team for a year and a half, and I see us thinking outside the box and using very, unconventional manners, right, of trying to engage and not trying to circumvent systems, but figuring out new ways to work within the system that is already present, right? I think that things have been a status quo for so long that bringing people to the table that are willing to think outside the box and challenge the status quo is a necessary component, and I'm really grateful that we're doing that. I think that for us, some of the things that really have worked is being able to go in and meet with clients consistently. Now, I mean, when I say consistently, I'm saying maybe it's once a week, maybe it's every couple of weeks. I run teams of two people on any given day. And we are in somewhat emergent response team, so I may not be able to get into the jail every week, but they are consistent enough that once they do meet with an individual within the jail through the ACE program, that person after a couple of weeks is like, oh, hey, they're actually coming in. They want to talk to me. They want to get to know me. We build the rapport. We get the paperwork started. And once they're released from jail, if we see them walking on the street, we stop and talk to them. We're like, hey, when's the last time you ate? Or, you know, it's about continuing that rapport. And I think that that's a pretty critical component, right? Is that once they're released from the jail, they don't fall off our radar. That's actually when they're on our radar. You know, they're just part of the community. And I mean, HEART is a Lake Whatcom Center team, but we support Whatcom County. And I want to make that very, very clear. We've worked closely with the ART team. We work closely with those at Crisis Triage. We're on first name basis with most of the people at the hospital. I mean, like, we're kind of everywhere all the time. And I mean, we're on staff basically from noon to 10 p.m. We have a 24-hour emergent line. Like, if we can't respond immediately, we will redirect to the resource that can in the moment and then follow up within 24 hours. So I don't know. I feel like I got off track. I apologize, but yeah.
Thank you. Lots of great things working well. All righty. Next question is, whose responsibility is it to address these gaps and come up with some new solutions? Melora?
And I know, Melora, you have limited time. If you want to take two here, two at a time, go for it. 'Cause
Okay.
I'm sure you have something to say about policy too.
I can do that, Marty. Thank you. Well, I mean, I think this is a really interesting question, and I like that you're asking it. I think that this responsibility does not lie with just any one entity. I think the responsibility lies with the community. And we elect officials, we pass sales taxes, we hold our community or our elected officials accountable, or we don't, right? And as a community, I think we have to have a bold vision and demand that we find a path to get there, knowing that we don't have enough resources to do everything we want to do. We know that that's the reality. I'm sure this group understands that in 2025 and looking forward, we are not in the best financial situation that we wish we were. And that's true for this county, that's true for our cities, and that's true for the state. And so we know that there are going to be challenging decisions. And it is our responsibility to put our values at the front of what we do in order to make those decisions. And if we don't have community input, if we don't have engagement that is real, then, you know, whatever makes the most financial sense is going to be the decision that decision makers have to make if they don't hear clearly from their community what they would like them to do. And, you know, I think we live in a world right now where it appears we don't have a lot of power or control over what is happening and decisions that are being made. But I think here in Whatcom County, this is an example of something we do have some involvement in and some responsibility to make sure that we highlight this reentry piece and the people, our most vulnerable community members that are cycling through not only crisis, but our legal system, the jail, the hospital, law enforcement knows them. If we build things that serve those folks, it will serve everyone well, right? If we gear things towards the most acute needs and the most vulnerable, then we can address folks that have needs that are less. I do want to just call out that I think it's tempting to say, that's not us. That's the county, that's the exec's office, that's the city, that's the sheriff's office, that's law enforcement. And I think that does not serve our community well. And I think it's not helpful because we know that we all have a role to play in this. And if we all have a similar trajectory of we want this thing, we want reentry to work, what what Kira was and Robin were talking about, we want someone to meet people as they're released from that type of facility. We can do that. We can figure out how to do that, but it's going to take investment and it's going to take resources. And so that, to the second question, what do we need to advocate for? We need to be clear that we can't fund it all right now. And so as a community, we need to be really vocal about what we think the priorities are. Because unless we pass new taxes or put in place a state income tax or something like that, we don't have other resources. So we have to decide how we prioritize those things. There are tangible things like the Medicaid waiver, like people's Medicaid not being turned off when they go to jail. That would be very, very helpful. But we also need to make sure that Medicaid continues to be funded in order for that to be effective in Whatcom County. I think that engaging in our legislative, with our legislative parties, our elected officials, we have some pretty wonderful ones in Whatcom County, making sure that they understand how much work is happening at this level. Are they dialed in the same way that we are? And we need to make sure they are, because if all this work is happening at our level, but we're not connecting it to the state work, then bills and things are going to be passed that are not in line with all the work that we're doing. So again, all of that takes a lot of work. But to me, it's having our values be at the very front of what we advocate for, and with the understanding that we can't do it all, that we're going to have to make some hard decisions.
Thank you so much, Melora, and thank you for being here if you have to hop off soon. Robin, would you like to speak to either or both of those questions?
Yeah, I do, and to echo a little bit of what Melora said, I do think the responsibility lies in so many different places, not just one place. If we're looking at reentry from the jail, where it starts at a lot of different spaces, and being able to own it, because often we get frustrated. It's like, oh, well, that didn't happen because of this, this, and this, and there's a lot of gaps in our system, and I think the responsibility is like recognizing where those gaps are. We can't do it at all, but what we can do, and being really clear about that. What has been very critical is, when we do have a place for somebody to go. So if you talk about like what to advocate for, I do think some reentry shelter housing, it's critical. Without that, that's a stabilizing it's just a stabilizing piece for somebody to know where they're going to go. The other thing is the ability, and some of this is Medicaid, some of it's just where we're at in our community with substance use disorder providers, mental health providers, the ability to have concrete appointments and somebody to support somebody in that transition and getting there is critical. Right now, so much of our systems depend on open access. And so an open access when your life is in chaos doesn't always work. I know there's reasons for it, but so advocating for services that would be stabilizing forces. And in that, the responsibility is not in anyone's space. It's, with our individual agencies to go, okay, what can we sustain? And looking at jail reentry, what can they sustain within the county and the health department? What can we sustain, and pick off those different goals to fill those gaps? But those, I think the two priorities to advocate for is really that housing or shelter upon reentry, and the ability to actually to have some concrete follow-up for people to say, hey, this something tangible is incredibly important.
Thank you. Kira?
I'm waiting for the questions to load because I've forgotten already. Whose responsibility is it to address the specific gaps? Everybody. We all have gaps within our own systems, and it's important to like not necessarily call each other out, but call each other in to what needs to be changing and how doable is it to make those changes, and that's in your specific agency. I do think it's really important to address specific gaps with the need of like knowing, like we could talk about like loose plans to the live long day of what needs to be happen, but if there's not like a set agenda of like this person does this thing, this person does this thing, it gets lost in whose responsibility it is to accomplish those in the long run. So like having very specific set agendas for changes. And then to move on to the next question is, it's gone away, but I'm assuming like what would I like to advocate for? Always going to be housing, a safe place for people to go. Ideally, and this might be too specific, would be not releases after hours or on the weekends, because there are no support people, typically not a lot of support people unless it's emergency crisis services on the after hours or the weekends. And if someone's getting out at 11 p.m. at night and it's 20 degrees outside and Lighthouse Mission no longer accepts intakes after like 5 or 6 p.m., then there's nowhere for an individual to go and they risk freezing to death. Or they go use substances because it's the one thing that they use to stay warm, and then they pass away. So like these are very harsh realities that happen. So that is a big thing that I would like to see changing, is not releasing during business hours, outside of business hours.
Thank you. Alice?
I'm just going to piggyback on that from the perspective of Heart Team and getting someone connected directly to me to get that mental health assessment like settled and taken care of. If we had specific dates and times that were within operating business hours that we knew a person was going to be released, I can adhere my schedule to that. If I don't know when they're coming out, I can't go and meet them necessarily, right? Like I have no problem going and meeting a person when they're being released and being like, hey, let's just get this taken care of. Let's get it done. Like, let's get you connected to the services. But having some kind of scheduled or timeliness set up around that, I think would be one of the biggest things that I would advocate for, just from the perspective I'm coming at it from. And also transportation. I think that getting like that has got to be one of the biggest barriers I come across on a weekly basis is, okay, I've got this appointment, but I don't have a bus pass, or I don't have a ride, and it's like 6 miles away, or right, and sometimes I can go and pick a person up, and sometimes I can't for a multitude of reasons, and sometimes there's not a way to connect to get that connected. So I know I'm going at these questions a little backwards, but I think that that's what I would want to advocate for, is some kind of transportation allowance, maybe, or like on a certain amount of days a week for a certain amount of hours, you would have somebody that like that's their job, right? And supporting the county or supporting different programs. And I think that as far as whose responsibility is it to address specific gaps, I think it's all of ours collectively, but we're going about it in like what I see us doing is going about addressing it in parallel lines versus collaboratively. And I think that if we work towards it in a more collaborative manner with like sustainable long-term outcomes, like as the end goal for all of us, I think it has the potential to be more successful long-term. And I don't think that there's nothing wrong with working parallelly, or am I even saying that right? But in parallel lines, there's nothing wrong with that. It keeps everything very separated, and I think it keeps everything very like almost too insulated from organization to organization to organization. And I think that if we can come together with these types of meetings and these types of collaborations, like it's only going to benefit the community that we're saying we want to serve in the long run. And I think that we have to kind of like put our actions and our money where our mouth is. But that's all I got.
Thank you. And thank you to all of you. do we have time if anybody from Chuckanut would like to speak on any of these questions, or Joey or Daryl if they're still there too?
Yeah, Marty, would you pop the questions up again?
Mm-hmm.
I think Joey and Daryl have both left, so I'm not sure if yeah, they're not here to answer those questions.
Oh, thanks, Elizabeth.
Can I add something to the wish list to lobby for?
Yeah.
And it was kind of echoing what Alice was saying as she was talking, is some early identification or predictability about like releases, which we're trying really hard right now, and our legal system right now doesn't allow for it all of the time, and sometimes it does. But whatever we can do to have some more predictability around that would help all of us that are trying to support reentry. And I understand with court dates and legal proceedings and everything that we don't always know, but sometimes like we turn around and there was a hearing at this time and the person has to release by this time, and we find out 15 minutes before, 30 minutes before, 2 hours before. So that would be like lobbying for anything with that system to create predictability would really help. So sorry, I'm jumping back in and adding something.
And
That's great.
I have to jump off here in just a second, but I want to add one more thing too, which is just that, looking to our legal system partners, like our prosecutor, to screen for diversion opportunities, and then also looking to our judicial partners on the bench when they're sentencing and when they're communicating with individuals that are in that process, to remember that there are opportunities for diversion and reentry that can be supported by the prosecutor's office or the bench. And so I think this isn't just about at release, but it's also what is the responsibility of the legal system to identify that someone could really benefit from a different type of service, and use that opportunity and their engagement in the legal system to bring that up and potentially make it so. So thanks, everyone. What great conversation. I'm sorry to jump off.
Thank you, Melora. Can I just ask one follow-up question on what Alice said? I noticed Robin and Melora and others really nodding when Alice talked about working in parallel tracks. Another way we've heard that expressed is people are so siloed, and wishing for more collaboration and coordination. And I'm just wondering, like, I've heard that there are certain meetings that happen that try to increase communication between organizations, but I'm just wondering, like, what you think is missing or would help the most to increase that collaboration and break down silos.
Was that directed at me?
Any of you?
I'll jump in. I'll start. Honestly, I don't have an easy answer right off the top of my head. The thing that comes to mind is that I wish that I could set up just maybe a quarterly meeting with the community partners that I engage with the most, right? Which, I mean, and just have a meeting not about our mutual clients, but about the different approaches that we're making on a consistent and regular basis, and what isn't working, what's falling through the cracks, where we're missing the boat, because in some way or another, we all are. I mean, like, and I don't think it's through intention or by not paying attention. I think it's through a lack of resources, a lack of funding, a lack of manpower. I think it's important to get into rooms with those that are doing the same work, instead of being so siloed and separate, to get together and have the conversation so that we understand where we're each coming from, and to kind of, this is going to sound cheesy, but to remember the goals that we had in the beginning when we came into this work in the first place, to create more sustainable outcomes for individuals that are falling through the cracks and that the system is failing. And I think that those conversations need to happen in a collective manner versus just like from one organization to one organization to one organization. If I don't know if that's landing right, but yeah.
I would also add to that is the working parallel sometimes ends up because we have different pieces of the puzzle, or different groups have different access to different resources. And so Alice, like what you said, being able to meet and then talk about that and see, does it have to be siloed that way? That would be really, really helpful. Because I don't think we intentionally work in parallel. And at the same time, some of the resources that I have as part of my mental health court program, other programs don't have, versus somebody that's eligible to be referred to the ACE program versus some of the people that I work with mental health sentencing alternatives that aren't eligible to be referred to that program. And so we do end up doing the same work in parallel because we have different pieces of the puzzle, and even between mental health sentencing alternatives and mental health court, even though I'm overseeing some of that care coordination with both of them, there's different resources what those different populations even have access to versus, somebody with Lifeline connections. And if somebody goes to Lifeline versus Lake Whatcom Center for their mental health services, right now Lifeline doesn't have an intensive outpatient program for mental health, but Lake Whatcom Center does. And so they approach it differently. And I do think the ability to come together with that same body of work, and if there are different things we could do to collaborate and work together rather than parallel.
Yeah, Peter, go ahead.
I just want to point out that when we were in Nashville several years ago, there was one group called Mental Health Co-op that covered this population. No matter where we went, there they were. And instead of it being siloed like it is here in Whatcom County, it was one co-op working together. I know that that's a hard lift once you have all the different agencies working separately and in parallel. But I have always wondered whether a Slack channel, which is a product that's used often in technology companies to connect people, not through emails, endless emails, but rather it's a really robust way of communicating with one another, could be of great help. And I'm not sure that this is actually a practical suggestion, because often there are rules against y'all communicating with one another, probably, and a HIPAA might get in the way. But I'm telling you, there are solutions for bringing teams together, and they've been used for years.
Great, we have about 5-6 more minutes. So is there anyone on the panel who just felt like they wanted to share maybe 1 or 2 more thoughts? And when all of you have spoken, we can see if anybody else would like to talk or give feedback. What they heard. Hannah, how about for you? Do you want anything you'd like to probe the group for at this moment?
I don't know if I have anything else. It's great insight from all of you, and thank you so much for sharing. I think you guys echo a lot of the same concerns and the same ideas, and I know that things have been over the past couple of years, especially really collaborative in the behavioral health front, especially. And we have a lot of community provider meetings, and that's really wonderful. I think one thing that we can improve upon and see more of is working in collaboration with the other systems that are involved, like the legal system, or even just branching out into like the hospitals and emergency services instead of like our traditional community-based behavioral health agencies, because there are a lot of things that we can do that might not be successful because the legal system prohibits it, or there's just certain limitations that they can do, not holding people for longer than they need to, and they have to be released in the middle of the night. And so how do we connect with each other and make sure that those systems are working as well in coordination as possible, and advocating for ideals that we have aligned.
Great, thanks. Caleb?
Hello, everybody. Just by way of introduction, in case folks don't know, my name is Caleb Erickson. I'm the Chief Corrections Deputy here with the Sheriff's Office. And I wanted to speak to a couple of things, because as I'm hearing the panel speak and what Hannah just touched on here a moment ago, is we don't have the ability in corrections to hold people past when the courts say it's time to let them go. And I think that's an important thing, right? Letting people go when it's appropriate to do so. So it's a true challenge when somebody bails out in the middle of the night, and it's less than ideal, but we can't hold folks past what their appointed time is. And so one of the things that comes to mind as I'm thinking about that as a challenge, what solution might be available to us, is the Rapid Resource Center, as Stark pointed out earlier in this discussion, where there is a place where you can imagine even just being able to meet somebody or wait where you're not out in the cold or in the heat, so that you can get something to eat, get some coffee, charge your phone, and wait to make a connection with somebody. And so I feel like that is a good component for or potential solution in this circumstance where we have to release people in the middle of the night. So as we consider the justice implementation plan, those are the things that come up for me in this conversation, is how do we meet those needs? Like, certainly we have an issue. How do we meet that issue head on? So just want to point that out.
Thank you. Peter?
I have always found that talking to and listening to frontline workers like we have today is probably the most important, right up there with people with lived experience. And I think that we should, I would love to get more frontline workers presenting in some way that's really helpful to them at the main IPRTF meetings. And so I would ask those panelists whether you have some ideas on how we could take an hour or 90 minutes to hear from you in ways that would be practically helpful, actionable, and talking to the policymakers that are around the table. So if you could give that some thought and get back to us, that would be really, really helpful. And I'll tell you, when I became co-chair of the IPRTF, I did a lot of interviewing of people. Some of the most impactful interviews I had were with caseworkers, and hearing their daily problems, which can all be resolved. I can tell you, they can all be resolved without a whole lot more resources. So many of them are just operational, and they just have to be worked out. It's not going to take politicians, and it's not going to take lots of money. It just takes focus on poor systems and improving those. And thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thank you. Heather?
Thank you. I have maybe a sidebar question. I've always been confused about, Caleb, what you were saying about you can't hold people longer than post their release. And I'd love to understand, and I don't know if this is the space, but why are courts releasing people in the middle of the night, or is it like the time to process from when the court tells you to when? I just don't understand the timing and why there are, and how many middle of the night releases are there, and if there's system things that can be done to address that, you know?
Yeah, so generically speaking, the courts aren't releasing people actively in the middle of the night. It's a function of bail. So when people post bail, sometimes they post bail in the middle of the night. And we don't hold people past when that happens. So less common is where somebody has been sentenced to be released and they're serving a sentence, and they booked in the middle of the night. There are certain circumstances where we would release them and not hold them past that point. But usually when those cases come up, we're releasing them in the morning rather than in the middle of the night. So the cases we're talking about here are largely people who are posting bail. And then additionally, we do have statistics about when people are released, and it varies widely. But I have data on when people are released. We can do some studying of that information to get that out.
It would be interesting to see like the after hours too. So there's the middle of the night, then there's after hours when there aren't supports opened. My experience with some of the things that I've been frustrated with is the late in the day court appointment, which we can't control necessarily. And then that's over, and then they're released, and then there's a couple of hours, then there's the order, and then they can be released, then there's a couple of hours. Well, by the time that happens, sometimes it's like 7, 8 o'clock. Sometimes it's 6 o'clock. So then maybe adjusting where those supports are. And I know the heart team has hours adjusted. So, Caleb, it would be really interesting, and you probably have already done this, about like hours, how often that does happen in the evening hours or the morning hours before people are there to support people too. I think that would be really useful.
Well, if I can respond to that, sorry, I keep jumping in, but our Superior Court and District Court take place in the afternoon. So District Court starts at 1:30 for most in custody hearings, and then Superior Court for first appearances and arraignments is at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And so if you're being heard at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and your case isn't called until 5 or 6 o'clock, which does happen quite frequently because our cases run into the early evening most days, we don't get the paperwork back on your case being processed from the courts, sometimes for an hour. And then, sometimes at 6, 7 o'clock in the evening before we're even getting the paperwork saying to release somebody. So that by function is pushing us into the evening in most cases. So I am walking back slightly what I said earlier about the courts not releasing people after hours. It is a pretty routine occurrence that's happening after hours. I meant specifically in the middle of the night. So
yeah, let's put a pin in this one because it came up at our other panel discussion, and we talked about it some, I think, at our last meeting, and this might even be something we can spin off a work group. It seems really resonant with Peter's comment about, there's just things in the system that we could just fix that thing in the system. I mean, obviously it wouldn't be necessarily altogether simple, but we could fix that thing in a system and really have a big impact. So let's put a pin in that one. And we should probably transition, but Kira, did you have one more comment you'd like to make?
I did not. I think it got touched on already.
Okay, super. Hannah, anything you want to say to wrap us up?
Nothing additional except for just thank you again for everybody who participated. Really appreciate it.
Hear, hear. That was awesome. Thank you guys. That was so helpful and so interesting. Really appreciate it. Okay, I would just have one more thing left to do before public comment. So Marty, go ahead.
Okay, I'm just going to do a quick rundown on year-end reporting. This is the businessy part of our meeting, and if non-members want to sign off at this point, feel free, and thank you from me too. It was such a good discussion. Really appreciate it. So year-end reporting, just a quick timeline of how this is going to work. So what you where we are right now in October is committees reporting on their activities. And you all saw a draft of the content. We put one of these together for every committee, a chart that shows what it's in your packet, the chart showing what we might like to report for this year. And timeline wise, we have a person who works with us named Jennifer Moon, and we're working together with her to write this up into a report. And that report with the content from the JPOP committee and all of the other committees will come back to us, and we'll look at that in November and provide any feedback on our sections there. And then in December, the IPRTF will approve that report, and it goes to council in January. So right now, we just want to give a little time for you all to, members to provide anything you saw in that report that you feel could be added from our activities, or things that you feel like you would like to edit. And just stop the share. And this is just open for a quick discussion. If anybody has anything you'd like to add here. And I can bring up the report to look at, the report material to look at if you haven't looked at it in your own packet, if you like. And you're also totally welcome to just say, looks good, thumbs up. So just to make sure we are all literally on the same page, we're talking about this document. And these are the in this right-hand column.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Rob. Anybody else thumbs up, go for it. And if you have any comments, please share them now. And don't worry, there is another opportunity when we see the written draft of the full report with our stuff integrated. Thank you, Pamela. Okay.
I think I'd just like to see the drafts, because I agree with everything here, so thumbs up. And I think I want to see the drafts. I could say more.
Thanks, Miriam. Okay, all righty. I'm going to move on unless anybody else wants to chime in.
The only thing I was wondering if you were going to include the part where like multiple people toured Degualic. I thought that, I'm probably saying it wrong, but I thought that was something that was brought here and was quite beneficial. I don't know if that falls within the timeline, but I didn't see that on here. And I feel like there were several of us that went to that. So I don't know.
You are absolutely right. And I was one of them along with you. So I should have remembered that too. I think you're right that we should include that. Good point. And again, thanks to Dan Hamill who organized that field trip because it was really valuable. So we'll get that added in there. Thanks, Amber. Okay. next little bit here is just to share with you what else is happening. So not only are we looking back at what has been accomplished over this past year, but we are also looking ahead to planning for 2026. And the IPRTF will be meeting on October 27th as the full task force to review the 10 IPRTF goals and discuss top 3 priorities for the coming year. In November, we will, as a committee, discuss our top priorities and develop. Holly and I and Tasha and Hannah will draft up an action plan and run that by you. And then our committee's action plan will become part of the full IPRTF action plan, which will include, every committee's action plans. Holly, you want to add anything to that? Clarify or say more? Okay. Anybody have any questions
No, that
about
was good.
what we're doing? Okay, so our next, we're going to do public comment. But can I just say at our next, can I do this part real quick here?
Yeah.
So at our next meeting, we'll have more chance to debrief what we heard here today. And we're also going to hear from Miriam and team about Whatcom Racial Equity Commission's analysis of racial disparities in incarceration, and look at the third quarter's Justice Project Progress Report. But here we are right down here at this 4th bullet. We're going to work on our action plan in November. Holly, want to call that?
Okay. Time for public comment. So any person here today who is not part of the I was in an IPRTF meeting today, not part of the J would like to make a comment. Yeah, Riley, please go ahead.
I just want to highlight, speaking of November 20th, we have our first community engagement workshop. Hey, you've already got the slide up. Yay. On Thursday, November 20th, which is a Thursday, at the Pioneer Pavilion in Ferndale. This is your chance to talk to our design build team that will be designing and building our justice facilities. So it's really exciting. It's a great opportunity to both provide direct input onto what we're going to build, but also to track some of the progress towards all of those wonderful goals in the Justice Project implementation plan. So just wanted to plug that.
Thanks, Riley.
Peter, maybe turn off your sound for a minute. Yeah. Okay, I would like to see a show of hands. 2 things. How many people were aware of the community engagement workshop? This is about, our big moment here. How many people were aware of it? Raise your hand.
Well, I just put out the announcement yesterday, so.
Oh, just yesterday. Okay.
Yeah, so.
All right. Okay.
We're on the early side here.
Yeah. Like we're just getting there. The Justice Project newsletter goes out tomorrow, which you are all on, so.
Thank you, Riley. I stand humbled. And I guess I just want to note the importance for the role of the JPOP in helping people get there. I do think we've talked about this many times, that here's a really important way JPOP members can contribute to outreach here. Okay, thank you. Peter, did you want to say something here?
I just wanted to double down really quickly on what you just said. This is the role of the JPOP, and so important that each and every member do what they can with their networks to bring people to this very important public meeting. So thank you for considering doing that.
Right.
Will we get the flyer? I'm guessing you sent it out, but will we also get the flyer in our email as a follow-up from this meeting?
Absolutely. That's an easy thing to do. I will send the updated flyer to Marty and Holly, so that they have that. Also, the Justice Project newsletter goes out tomorrow and it'll have the flyer in it. It's also on our website and social media and all those great places.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Okay, anybody else who'd like to make public comment? Okay, Jonathan and Alice, I just want to thank you both for being here. It's nice to see your faces. I think anything else, we could wrap it up for today. Yeah, Jonathan, you want to say something? Do you want to speak?
Yeah. Can you hear me okay? Sorry, I'm struggling here with Zoom. I'm a Teams guy just by default. Did I need to make a quick introduction?
No,
Or
but you can.
Okay.
You got the floor. Do it.
Well, I just want to say I'm excited to be here. Checking y'all out. So I work with Fire District 7. I'm an EMS captain there. I've been a paramedic for about 13 years. Yeah, I'm excited to be a part of this. Actually, I'm kind of a mixed bag. I actually, you know, I had a major struggle with substance abuse when I was younger, and I've been clean since 2005. So when Robin mentioned what's it called now, mental health courts, I was a participant back in the day when it was called drug court. So yeah, so I graduated that program when I was 20 years old. That's exciting. I was curious if anyone from those systems was going to be here. So anyway, I'm grateful to be here. Thank you.
We're so glad to have you, Jonathan. And just so the rest of the committee knows, Jonathan has applied to fill the EMS seat, which has been vacated by Scott Rickman, who could no longer attend these meetings. And so we're so glad Jonathan has applied, and we'll find out that he has to go through the council approval process, which is supposed to happen in the next couple weeks. So yay.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming.
All right, anything else? All right, everybody, have a great rest of your fall, and we will see you in November. Bye.
Thank you all.